Welcome to Weight Loss and Wellness for Real, the podcast where people like you get the practical solutions and support you need to permanently lose the physical and mental weight so you can feel better and live the life you really want to live in the body and mind you really want to be living in. If you're looking to overcome your stress eating, overeating, binging behaviors, and move to a place of food and body freedom, as well as find more meaning and more moments of joy in life, you are in the right place. Hey everyone, thank you for being here and tuning in and listening to today's episode. I have a really special guest. Her name is Brooke Simonson, and she is a nutrition coach specializing in evidence-based sustainable weight loss. Unlike restrictive one-size-fits-all diets that only provide short-term results, Brooke helps her clients adopt science-backed nutrition and lifestyle habits that work for their unique likes, dislikes, time constraints, so that they can lose weight permanently, have high energy throughout the day, feel completely in control of cravings, and stay consistent long term. As I just told you about, we have Brooke Simonson on the podcast. I'm really excited to have her here. Brooke and I met it was almost a month or two ago now. I don't know, that time goes so fast, but she was so kind to let me be on her podcast. So now she said she'd come on mine. So I'm really excited for that. So Brooke, thanks for being here. And do you maybe just want to give the listeners a little intro to you, how you got into nutrition coaching, just some of your background?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. By the way, I love the name of your podcast. I think
good.
it just speaks exactly to what I know you believe in and I believe in, and I'm very excited for this conversation.
I appreciate that.
I have not always, so I'm currently a nutrition coach. I've not always done this. I actually started out as a teacher. I went to college in California, moved to New York City through this volunteer teaching program, and ended up staying in New York for 12 years, where I started in middle school, moved up to high school, always taught English. And
nice.
I had some, I don't want to say health issues, but struggles of my own throughout my 20s, which at the time I kind of chalked up to aging, which I know sounds ridiculous now, but I was like, oh, I'm getting older. I'm not in college anymore. This is just what happens. This is what I've heard happens. And so I put on about 20 pounds right after college, super tired all the time, very sluggish, just didn't feel great. And again, I just thought, oh, I guess this is what people talk about. You enter the workforce and it's all downhill from here.
Right.
And I was literally
It's normal.
22.
It's normal.
I was 22. Which is just so funny to me now. Such a little baby. But fortunately, I mean, I didn't want to settle for that. And I thought, I do see people out there in their 30s and 40s who seem to be thriving. So what are they doing? Right. And then what I saw them doing is what most people are doing, is to lose the extra weight, which I knew was kind of an issue. That was, it was one of the things that was causing some of my other symptoms. I thought, okay, I'll do this juice cleanse, or I must just need to go to the gym more. So I worked out on the elliptical 45 minutes at a time, 6 to 7 times a week. I did, the bar replacements, or I thought, okay, I just need to have really good willpower, and that's the solution. I did all the things. I at one point went keto for several years. I thought, I can't eat sugar or carbs.
Been there, done that. Yeah.
I think we've all done it. I'm sure your listeners have done at least one of the things I mentioned. And
for sure,
I would say everything worked and that I would lose weight. But then when I stopped being very restrictive and following the rules, I would gain all the weight back. Yeah. So I was in that vicious cycle of, I've heard it, described as the roller coaster, the yo-yo, the hamster wheel, couldn't break out of it. But again, I'm very type A, organized. I was teaching. I love school. I'm a good student. And I just kept thinking, there are people out there though that are doing this. So they have to be doing something. And I don't understand what it is. And so funnily, it was right at the start kind of podcasts. I met my now husband. He was my boyfriend at the time. And he was really into podcasts. I had never listened to a podcast, but I started to kind of find different nutrition and weight loss podcasts. not all of which I still subscribe to, but at the time I thought, oh, this one will kind of help me. Some of them were still in kind of like the keto diet sphere.
Sure. Yeah.
And so it took me a little while to find my path, but eventually I ended up finding evidence, I would say, or just what actually works. And it's not the frills and the fads and the quick fixes I was trying. And I realized that's what these people are doing. They're doing mindset work. They're eating more protein. They're eating more fiber. They're walking. They're not necessarily going hardcore 7 days a week at the gym.
Exactly.
They're sleeping. They're managing their stress. And so once I started kind of doing the boring things, as I say to my clients, it's the boring habits day in, day out that you just commit to and you stay consistent with. Once I started doing those, I started seeing the results. And that's what actually worked because I lost the weight. I kept it off long term. And then throughout my 30s, I have had more energy, no more 4 p.m. crash at the end of the day. People used to joke that they would need to carry, people as in my parents would joke that they needed to carry like an emergency apple for me because I would get so
Give you
hungry.
That energy.
Yeah, my blood sugar was all over the place throughout my 20s.
Sure.
If Brooke hits that crash and we still have an hour for dinner, until dinner, God forbid, like get her that apple.
Give her the apple.
Yeah. So I was a mess, but fortunately figured it out sooner than later. So long story long, I guess. My husband and I moved from New York to California in 2019. I had enrolled in a course to become a nutrition coach. At the time, I thought it was just kind of a passion project on the side of my teaching career. But when we were moving across the country, I thought, okay, I'm either going to get another job teaching or I could try this crazy thing and launch my own business and try nutrition coaching. And that's what I ended up doing. And so that was about 5 years ago. And I've never looked back. I feel like I still get to teach in a really fun way. I'm no longer teaching. I was at an all boys high school. So that came with its own challenges. So, I feel like I taught the children for a while and it was great while it lasted. And now I'm working with adults and I prefer it.
So great.
And all the teachers out there, you're amazing.
Right? You paid your dues. That is for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That is so cool. And I love too how your own personal experience kind of led you into where you are at this point. So yeah, it's great. So let's talk about what would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions that people kind of have around weight loss?
I think the biggest one is that you can do one of these quick fixes or fads, or at the time, it may not even seem like that. So that you can do something very restrictive like keto and that's going to be the solution. Because what I always tell people to do is to ask yourself, whenever you start something new, is this something you're going to want to commit to for the next 100 years?
Exactly.
And that can feel daunting. Sometimes when I throw out the 100-year question, people say, oh my gosh, like I can barely think about dinner tonight, much less 100 years from now. And it's not meant to feel daunting or to throw you off. But what I want you to basically give your new program you're starting a report card and ask, am I cutting out my favorite foods? If the answer is yes, that's probably not going to be sustainable. Am I exercising nonstop? Is it hard for me to fit this into my schedule? Am I taking my own food somewhere? I know I was talking to a client the other day who did Ideal Protein.
Oh yeah.
And she went on a little kind of road trip, I guess with one of her kids for their sport last weekend. And she said it was just so freeing because she went to the snack bar and she saw this woman getting a salad with no chicken, just a salad with tomatoes and not even using dressing. So she was eating like dry lettuce and tomatoes. And she thought, oh, I've been there. And she got the turkey sandwich. And she said, I felt so full and satisfied. She ate half. She was so full after it. She ate the other half later. And she said in the past, she would have even taken her Ideal Protein food with her. And so there's all these things out there that are going to constantly be vying for your attention. They're these shiny objects. There's going to be a new one next month that we don't even know about yet.
Always. Yeah, exactly.
And I think the misconception is constantly that this is the thing that's going to work and this is the thing I'm going to be able to do. But if you ask yourself that question, I know if I would have asked myself that question at 25, let's say, am I going to be able to do this for the next 100 years? The answer would have been a wholehearted no.
Absolutely not. Right.
I didn't like what I was doing. I didn't like what I was eating. I wasn't happy in my routine. It wasn't flexible. It wasn't realistic. And so
probably felt really hard.
Really hard. Yeah. And it's not to say that if you have a weight loss journey or a health goal, that it's never going to feel hard. There will be times that feel hard, but the hard should not feel like the hard that you've had in the past, if that makes sense. So I have so many clients who will say, oh my gosh, this feels so much easier.
Yes.
I didn't know it could be this easy. And it's not that it's, rainbows and butterflies 100% of the time, but compared to their past attempts, it's easier.
It's so much better. Yes.
Yeah. And
exactly,
so I just think one misconception out there is just, I'll try this new thing and this will be the thing that works. But if it's kind of almost at all packaged as some type of miracle magic pill, this is the thing, I would be really skeptical of it, because the things you're going to do to lose weight are essentially the same things you're going to do to keep the weight off long term. And I think that is what I had to learn for myself. And I'll tell my clients, the real only difference between what we're doing is I might be eating a little bit more because I'm at maintenance calories and they're in a calorie deficit. But other than that, what we're doing throughout the day is basically identical. And I'm not losing weight. I'm maintaining my weight. And so the things you're going to do to lose weight, you have to be sure you're on board to commit to those things, because that's what you're going to have to keep doing if you don't want to be in that yo-yo and continue to gain the weight back.
Yeah, exactly. Beautifully put, and makes so much sense. And I think, to your point, that probably, as you were talking, I was kind of thinking in my head, are there other bigger misconceptions out there? But I think the one that you talked about is the biggest one, where it is you use the word shiny object, and that's a perfect way to describe it. And that was me forever too. It was like this diet, that diet, like, you'd hear the next new thing. And it was like, I was always trying to take off pounds. And so, you're hopping into all those things. And again, you said this, they do work at first. So then you almost get kind of caught up into it, but to your point, it's really understanding, whatever you are doing now to lose the weight, it is going to be what you have to do to maintain that weight and not go through the process again. So if you don't think you can do it, or you don't want to do it, there's got to be another way to do it.
Totally. And
people
will
think
come
too
at
like
me.
it. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, people will come at me on TikTok. Let's throw TikTok out. Let's throw TikTok under the bus. But they'll say, I'll say you don't have to go keto to lose weight. And people will lose their minds in the comments.
Oh, yeah.
And say, well, I've been keto and I love it. And I said, I did not say it doesn't work for anyone. Go back and rewatch. I said, you do not have to do this. There are some people who want to follow a more restrictive plan.
Yeah. And it works for them.
I just believe everybody should do what works for them. If you pop into the comments and you say, this worked for me, I say, that's amazing. I'm so happy you found what worked. But I do find that there is this kind of honeymoon moment with anything when somebody will get very defensive about it. So maybe it's their first 3 months doing intermittent fasting or keto. And they're all on board. And then somebody says, you don't have to do this. And they get really threatened and they defend it to the death. And then if you follow that person a year from now, are they still doing that?
They're not doing it. Exactly.
Probably not. So I always just think about that as well, is the people. I think this is also difficult, is your friends and family around you are going to be doing these things.
Right.
And they might be losing weight faster. And so they're constantly,
I hear that a lot too,
going to be falling for these things that you once did. So if you are on this path, it's going to be a little bit slower than if you're doing the meal replacement shakes, if you're doing the quick fix, it's quick fix.
Yeah.
And so and then they're going to become these evangelists for whatever they're doing.
That's right.
So that can be very challenging too, when you have chosen the slow, steady path to kind of block that all out and ignore that, because
it's so true.
People come
you
in
have
hot.
to be strong in your boundaries. Yeah, for real. You and I are so similar in our approach and how we think about this and how we work with clients. So this makes it so easy to talk to you. But I was thinking too, what are your thoughts around, because you brought up calories before, and I follow you, and you, by the way, anyone, we'll talk about this at the end where you can follow Brooke, but I would highly suggest you all follow Brooke, because your social media, at least on Instagram that I follow, you give lots of such awesome, practical, wonderful information. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
So back to the calories bit. Is that a big piece of what you use in working with? Because, there's sort of this controversy of like calories in, calories out. Is it calories in? Is it, all that stuff? Where are you kind of at with all that? And how do you use that to work with clients?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so clients will say, is a calorie a calorie? I see that. Or are all calories not created equal? And I say it's both. I mean, you have to be in a calorie deficit to lose weight, which doesn't mean you have to track calories.
That's right.
Which is also a misconception. I mean, if I say you have to be in a calorie deficit, somebody will immediately come to me and say, well, I lost weight without tracking calories. And I'll say, awesome. You were still in a calorie deficit. So whatever you were doing, there are habits that you can build and not track a single calorie, and you can put yourself in a deficit. And then the flip side of the coin, are all calories created equal? In a sense, yes, because somebody could eat only Twinkies and lose weight. We've seen those stories where my brother-in-law was just showing me the other day, somebody who only ate Costco pizza and lost weight. Are you doing a service to your health? No. Are you getting variety? No. Is that sustainable? No. But it's to prove a point. You could just eat any one food or eat McDonald's or something and lose weight. However, a calorie is not just a calorie in the sense that some help you feel more full and satisfied than others. And so when you are working on weight loss, when you're prioritizing the calories from things like protein and fiber that help you feel full and satisfied, it's going to be easier to be in a calorie deficit. And you're not going to feel like you have in the past when maybe you've tried to lose weight and you're hungry all the time. You're going to feel physically full, and you're going to hit the end of the night, and that's going to help with cravings and snacking. It's just, is a calorie? Not necessarily, in terms of which ones help you feel full, but at the same time, kind of, yes. So it's this whole complicated equation. In terms of tracking, I have clients who track and I have clients who don't track. And so I very much live in that gray middle area that doesn't really exist on the internet anymore, where everybody says you have to track and it's the best thing for everybody. Or people are saying you can't track because it creates disordered eating patterns and obsession and nobody should track. I'm in the middle, and I have right now a handful of clients who aren't tracking and they're seeing beautiful results. And I have many clients who are tracking and they're seeing great results. And then my whole thing also is tracking is not meant to be, when I just said what you're doing to lose weight is what you're going to do to keep the weight off. Okay, so that doesn't mean tracking. So I don't mean that you're going to have to track for the rest of your life. I liken it to tracking your finances. You get a really good understanding of where you're spending your money if you start tracking your coffee purchases, your Amazon purchases, your subscriptions. Maybe you're subscribed to something you forgot you were even subscribed to, and you'd have no idea if you didn't really track your finances for a month, maybe 2 months. If you think of calories like dollars, you're just tracking where your calorie dollars are going, and you're learning which things are more expensive. So we're used to this with our spending habits. We're used to certain stores being more expensive and maybe saving up. And when we log onto that website, we're not buying every single thing we see there. We're choosing what's the most worth it item. What's the splurge that we want to make, that we want to last for years. calories work the same way. If you approach them and you think some foods are more calorie dollars, some are fewer, which ones are really worth my calorie dollars and which ones am I kind of like, I've eaten that in the past, but I don't know why. I don't really love that thing. So I'm going to skip it and feel fine about it. And I'm going to wait for that really delicious thing that's worth it. So when you track, this is kind of a conversation you can have. Even when you don't track, you can start thinking that way of you're spending your calorie dollars on different foods. And some are more bang for your buck, like the protein and fiber, for example. And so to answer your question, no, like not everybody has to track. I just hosted a calorie tracking training yesterday because if somebody does want to track, I want them to do it the right way with the right mindset. And I don't think the apps necessarily set you up for success. So the other issue with tracking is these apps are notorious for giving everybody 1,200 calories. And so I'm 5'11". I'm currently pregnant, so I'm hopefully gaining weight. That's my goal. But when not, my maintenance calories are 1,800 or 2,000, depending on how active I am. So if I were to be in a deficit and the app were to give me 1,200, that would be very extreme. And yes, I would lose weight, but again, that would be very unsustainable because it would be hard for me to cut back that much. And so things like that about the apps don't set people up for success. I teach you how to figure out your deficit that's healthier and that supports your activity level. Or if I'm working with you one-on-one, I figure it out for you. And then I also teach you, there's all these little kind of hidden, tough to find things in an app like MyFitnessPal that make tracking so easy. Where I have clients who are like, I can log everything I eat in the day. If you were to total up the time it takes me to track, it's like under a minute for the entire day. And so there are different ways to do it where you approach it with the mindset of, I'm not doing this forever. I go through a lot of mindset shifts around it, and it can be very educational. And then I also teach you, here's how you leave the app. So I think calorie tracking is one of those things that gets a bad rap, and it's absolutely not for everybody. There are some people, a lot of this space requires self-awareness and asking, is this serving me what I'm doing? Or is this leading to obsessive thoughts? Or, is this unhealthy for me? It might work for that other person, but maybe it's not the right fit for me. And that's fine. But I think in this space, it's become everybody has to do the same thing. Or I did this, so you have to do it. And that is not the case at all. Everybody needs to figure out what works for them.
Just a quick interruption to talk about today's show sponsor, and that is Amino Co. Amino Co. is a company that produces essential amino acid supplements, and I have been using their life formulation for a while now. Supplementing with essential amino acids has been shown to help with appetite control, as well as helping to support muscle maintenance and recovery. All of their formulations have been tested in clinical trials, which show they enhance physical function and muscle strength and support heart health. I really like knowing that along with getting in my dietary protein, I am also supplementing with essential amino acids I want daily for my long term goals of strength, muscle maintenance, and staying healthy as I age. So, some quick protocols if you want to give some of their products a try would be if you're someone trying to lose weight, you could take a scoop mixed with water in the morning and again in the afternoon, usually when you notice your energy slumping to help boost your appetite control. If you're an endurance athlete and you're doing longer than 1 hour of endurance work, you could take 5 to 10 grams per hour. So when I do my long bike rides, this is what I'm making sure I take in every hour. And if you're someone who exercises or works out a lot, you can take a scoop in water before bed. That's been shown to help with recovery. So I want to share this with you because you're a listener of this podcast, you can try their products for 30% off. If you decide to give these a try because you could use some help with appetite control and or want a supplement for muscle maintenance and recovery, then use my referral link, which is aminoco.com /capital H 30. Again, that is amino.com/H30. So you can go there, choose your product or products, and at the checkout code, you can use HH30, capital H, 30 for 30% off your entire order. Or to make it easy, just go to the link below the episode description, and I have a link right there for you. Could not agree with you more on the calorie stuff, that for some people it works, for some people it doesn't. I just always think too, like educating people on calories, because for me, a lot of us have done the calorie stuff forever. It's like counting calories forever. And but I do find I sometimes have clients who've never done that before. So sometimes it's just that education piece of letting them have a couple weeks or a month of counting calories. It's not something they want to do forever, but so that they can start to understand how many calories are in something, how much energy is in this, and learning to read labels and things like that. So sometimes I think even just being able to educate people on those things is important as well, because not everybody has that background.
And it's interesting, when I started coaching, I didn't do any calorie tracking with anybody.
Sure. Yeah.
And I was doing more of a balanced plate method, which I still do with everybody, regardless if you're tracking or not. But I had this one client in my group program who was working with me for a while. She wasn't getting great results, and she started tracking on her own. And her feedback to me was, I kind of wish this would have been a piece of the program that we could choose to do. I wish when I started and I had all this energy to get started, I wish I would have started this then versus waiting 5 months to do it when I'm kind of out of steam and feeling kind of frustrated.
Right.
And I really took that feedback to heart and thought, this is another tool. If we think there's a toolbox
there you go.
for fat loss, this is one tool in the toolbox. And I should provide access to this tool because some people do really well with it. And then there's other tools. There's dozens of other tools for people who don't want to do it. But if I'm withholding a tool, I feel like I'm not being the best coach, because some people thrive with it and can get better results quicker, and it just all clicks and they know it forever. And then they should have access to that, and then if they're going to do it, I want them to do it the right way. So I want to be guiding them through how to do that correctly.
That's a great way to look at it. You're spot on. Toolbox. There's many, and everybody's so different tools for everyone. It's just such a great way to conceptualize the whole process. So let's shift a little bit and maybe talk about, what do you, the mindset piece, because I know you go into that too. Why do you think it's important to work on mindset in addition to changing our behaviors when we're trying to lose weight or fat?
I flop back and forth, and I've thrown out non-scientific percentages all the time. I'll say, depending on the day, I'm like, mindset is 70%. Or the next day, I'm like, mindset is 90% of this process.
I love it.
I mean, I'm making this up, but
I get it.
I truly believe it kind of depends on the person as well. For some people, mindset, I'm not even kidding, is 90 to 100% of their journey. And when we connect, they'll say, I've tracked everything for years. I've been consistent. I walk a lot. I'm active. I sleep.
They're doing
great.
all the things.
I mean, they're doing literally all the things. And so sometimes I have a little hesitation of, is this even a good fit client? Is this somebody I can work with? Because it sounds like they're doing all the things that I would teach them. And then if we do end up working together and we start connecting, I realize they have 0% of the mindset stuff. And so it all goes off the rails the second there's a stressful moment at work, or the kids get sick, or they're taking care of aging parents. I mean, things get in the way, and their mindset around food is either I'm on the diet or I'm off the diet, or food is the first source they turn to for stress relief, or, it's such a big piece of this. And so I would say for everybody, it's at some percentage of your journey. And if you've never confronted the mindset piece, that's probably a piece that is holding you back from the success you could have. Even if you're having success and you haven't yet tackled some of these deeper mindsets that you have from your dieting past, you're going to have to tackle them at some point for the sustainability of things.
Exactly.
I believe.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
so
I do too.
I am a huge believer. There are so many mindsets. One that I love, I share this Gretchen Rubin quote.
Oh, I know her. Yeah.
And I will share it with you after this. You could post it if you want in the show notes or something. But she says, you look at your day in 4 quarters, and just like you would if you were playing on a basketball team. And if the first quarter doesn't go well and you're playing a basketball game, you don't just throw up your hands and say, well, we're going to lose the game now, so I'll just blow it for the next 3 quarters. She says you get back on track the next quarter. And so just even this one little mindset shift, I've had
it's huge.
Dozens of clients say this is the most impactful one, because in the dieting mindset, if you have a donut for breakfast,
it's all
your day's
over.
done. It's all over.
Yeah.
So might as well go to Pizza Hut for lunch and then drive through a McDonald's drive-through on the way home for dinner, because you've totally ruined that day at 8 a.m. So just throw the whole day out the window. And this mindset of quarters is so empowering, because then you have the donut, you enjoy it, maybe, or maybe you're like, that donut wasn't even that good. Maybe it wasn't even
have it. We would hope you enjoy it.
We would hope it's a good one. Even if it's not, you're like, okay, not going back to that donut place. Not the best donut. But then for lunch, you can ask, how can I prioritize nutrients? So I had this donut that's not the most nutrient dense. It's higher in calories, probably than something else I would have eaten. Not a problem. But at lunch, I really want to be sure to support my body. What's a way I could get some nutrients at my lunch? And so then that question frames what you eat, and you ask, could I get some proteins? Could I get some fiber? What's going to help me feel really good? It's probably going to actually help you feel really good, because when you have just a donut sitting in your stomach, that doesn't necessarily feel the best.
That's right.
And so this is a new frame we take of quarters versus just the entire day. This works great on weekends. Weekends are a big issue for people, especially if they used to be in the cheat day mentality.
Right. Oh my gosh, that was me for so long. And so weekends were tough for a long time, because to your point, had that going on.
You're on your diet.
A lot of people. Yep. But the weekends, you're
comes,
just like,
who cares?
Yeah.
Or vacations even. I used to go on vacation and think, this is a vacation from my job. It's a vacation from my diet. And I would just eat like a crazy person, like just insane stuff. And when I look back, it actually impacted the quality of my vacation, because I didn't feel good. And so it's not to say you're going to eat the same way you do when you're at home, when you're on vacation. But now I very much want to be sure I'm eating more nutrients. I'm eating fruits and vegetables. I'm walking. I want to keep doing many of the same things I'm doing, maybe to a lesser degree. There's more kind of ice cream and fun foods that sneak in on vacation, but I want to get the most out of it, and I want to feel my best, and I don't want to leave it thinking, oh my gosh, I have this big rock in my stomach of all the stuff I ate, and now I feel horrible, and I have to go back to work tomorrow. And I used to think, oh my gosh, now I can only eat vegetables for an entire week. I mean, what have I done? I just would feel terrible. So there's all these mindsets around weekends, vacations, day to day. They all are in us from our dieting past. And it's, you have to rewrite the script if you're going to make this a lifestyle, and it's not going to be just another diet.
Exactly. That, the quarters in the day, that's one of my favorite ones. I think, I'm not surprised that you have feedback from your clients who say that that's maybe one of the more impactful ones. And I think about when I started applying that personally, it was so impactful. It was huge, because I would constantly do the screw it up during the day, screw it up in the morning. And then it was this, screw it or F it mode for the rest of the day. It's so fascinating when you get into that different mindset about your day, because it really, I always try to explain to people, think about how many times you would have done that in the past without the mindset of the quarters of the day. So you would have, overate on all these days. But if you have that mindset, there are so many less days where you're overeating. So over time, that really makes a huge difference. And it's not, there are times it's hard, but it's not that hard to do. It's like when you have that new mindset, it's like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. You're not in shame after the donut. You're not in guilt. And so then it's like, it's way easier to make maybe a choice where you're getting more nutrients in for lunch or dinner or whatever. It's just, there's not that decision fatigue of like, oh, I really want all the cookies. Oh, I should have the chicken. It's just easier. So anyway,
it's easier.
I love that one.
And it definitely is a skill. All of the mindset stuff I view as skills that you have to practice. Yep. And it doesn't just
anyone can learn
automatically. It's something you have to, it's like you're learning a new language. So if you were learning German, you wouldn't learn it overnight. You would have to practice and practice.
You practice.
But then it just becomes a part of you. Yesterday, I mentioned my brother-in-law, he's living with us right now. He works at this wine store. He brings home these fun little treats from the neighboring little stores. And he brought home these biscuits. I'm not a biscuit person, but he brought these. And they were sitting on the counter in a bag. And I was like, those look freaking good. And I had a biscuit
plus
with
you're
butter.
Prager, so I bet they did look good.
For sure. Yeah, there have to be some joy in life. Yeah. So I had, which is very atypical for me. I just had a biscuit with butter for lunch, and it was so good. So good.
Oh, that's awesome.
I also didn't feel great after it. Like I usually have more energy in the afternoon. I was hungrier a lot sooner than I typically am because that wasn't the most nutrient dense thing. However, it was very satisfying, not that filling, but for dinner, we just went right on and had the cooked salmon poke bowls that I had planned.
Ooh,
and
delicious,
I felt really good after that because there was a lot of vegetables in it. There was the salmon, there was a little bit of rice, but I knew that was coming up. I knew I was getting a lot of nutrients there. And I will say, after dinner, I was snackier than typical.
Yeah, because of that biscuit.
Yeah, I just think it's really interesting, if you're used to prioritizing protein and fiber at meals.
Yep.
When you don't have it, it's not that anything bad happened. I'm not mad at myself for it, but I do think it's interesting to get very curious and have a mindset of curiosity rather than guilt or shame. And when you take that approach of, I wonder why I'm so hungry tonight when usually by 8 p.m. I'm not, and you connect the dots backwards, it is interesting on those days you eat a little differently when you're able to start realizing how much of an impact different foods make on you. And why so many of my clients say, once 8 p.m. hits, I feel out of control. I'm so hungry. I can't stop snacking. And a lot of it is connecting the dots back through the day. They're possibly not eating enough, or they're not eating enough of kind of the right things, which I'm putting in quotes, the right things being things that are going to help your body actually feel full and satisfied. And so then those cravings, those hit hard at night.
Yeah. I agree having that. And that goes into a little bit of a mindset shift of more, I always think of curiosity and willingness, but that mindset of curiosity versus the shame or guilt is so huge for exactly what you're talking about. And then, it is kind of cool. It gets almost kind of fun when you get curious like that. And you're like, oh yeah, I ate that thing and now I'm feeling this way, or now I notice this with my body or my energy or whatever it is. And I do think when you start to go there and you're paying attention, you then get to make better decisions in the future, because I will still sometimes choose to have the cookie or 2 cookies, but I do know how that will make me feel later. So, but I have the choice then. I get to make the decision consciously. And I think that's an important piece of it as well. So, so what are some other big common mistakes that you see, that you maybe see clients who you work with making? What are some of the bigger mistakes you see?
I've mentioned protein and fiber a lot, so I'll just start there. This is something I had no idea about when I was in my 20s and I was doing all the diets. I was more cutting things out and thinking, let me not eat A, B, C, D, E, F, G, instead of let me try to prioritize these things at meals.
Yeah.
Another mindset shift is if you think of the additive approach of what can I add to my plate rather than what should I take off my plate, it changes everything.
But it really does.
When you think about what to add, if you get protein and you're conscious about fiber too at your meals, protein's the most filling of the 3 macronutrients out of protein, carbs, and fat. And then fiber is also very filling. So fiber is coming from things like fruits and vegetables, whole grains, beans, lentils. There's higher fiber versions of pastas, of breads. And so if you're getting some fiber at meals, you're also getting some protein. It's just going to be way easier not to overeat because you literally can't.
Exactly.
Like speaking about the biscuit I had yesterday, in the morning I had a yogurt bowl and I personally like plain Greek yogurt. People think I'm crazy, but whatever. But I jazz it up, don't worry. And then I usually put on some chia seeds. I make granola myself that I am like addicted to. It's my favorite thing.
Nice.
So I have some granola on it. I throw a bunch of berries. I have that bowl every morning. I'm a creature of habit. I love it. I look forward to it. It fills me up so much. I also have some milk in my coffee. So if you log that into my Fitness Pal, I also sometimes have this Catalina Crunch cereal that's like a higher protein.
That.
Yeah,
I've had that.
I don't love it by itself. I like it on the yogurt bowl.
Topping or something. Yes,
topping.
I agree.
It's great as a topping
because it has a weird aftertaste.
I
if
agree.
You just eat it. Yeah,
and if you mix it, so I'll do like a quarter cup of that and a quarter cup of my granola, and if it's all mixed together, I can't. It's
perfect.
Delicious. I love it.
Yeah.
But when I put this bowl in my Fitness Pal, it's something like 40-50 grams of protein.
Perfect.
I'm
awesome.
so full. I hopped off a call yesterday at 1 p.m. I was like, I'm not even hungry yet for lunch. I'm just not.
Right.
And so I didn't eat yet. I pushed lunch back. And so that meal was so filling and satisfying.
Yeah.
That I could not have a morning snack, even if I wanted to. I mean, I could, but I would feel really bad.
You'd be forcing it down.
Yeah, I'd be forcing it down.
It's not even,
So I used to think, I was very motivated by the clock. I would be at teaching. Teachers have lunch very early.
Oh,
I would sometimes my lunch would be at 10:30
or something.
Yeah, exactly.
I used to work in a school and that was my lunch too.
Yeah, 10:30 to 11 was my lunch, which seems early, but I would literally be teaching in the morning and like counting down the minutes until 10:30 because I was so hungry. And then I would start counting down the minutes until my snack. And then I would take the subway home and I would sometimes get off the subway. I'd have a 15-minute walk home and I would stop in a corner store because I was so hungry.
Yeah.
I couldn't make it home. I was like, I'm going to die if I don't get something.
Yeah.
And so I had no conception of eating for fullness and that was a thing and that I could create meals in a way where I wasn't beholden to the clock or counting down the seconds to every meal. And now I'm more able to tune into hunger and fullness cues and maybe push lunch back some days if I'm not that hungry, or maybe I eat it earlier if I am. It's much more flexible and realistic in terms of real life of I'm not just eating by the clock necessarily. I think another big mistake is if you start doing this, you could only focus on the fullness part and just think, I want to create meals that are filling. But the other piece that I think is really critical is that they have to be satisfying.
Satisfaction. Exactly.
They have to be. So what will happen is, I'll give an example. If I were to make a chicken Caesar salad for lunch, I would feel full. So I'd have a lot of vegetables. I'd have a lot of fiber. I'd have the chicken on there. I would probably feel full. I would not personally feel satisfied. So often satisfaction comes from carbs. And if you think you can eat and enjoy high fiber carbs. So if I were to put that salad into like a whole grain tortilla and make a wrap, I would feel full and satisfied. If I didn't do that and I thought, I just have to eat a salad, like I can't have a carb, I just have to eat a salad, then I would be crawling around my pantry later in the day looking for that satisfaction. So a lot of cravings come from not feeling satisfied at your meals. So you're eating things you don't like, or you're eating things that are filling, but they're not satisfying. And then you're like, oh, I need a handful of crackers, or I need a handful of cookies or chips, or I'm craving bread. And so if you start including these things and you start finding swaps that you still enjoy, but they have more fiber in them, so they're also helping you feel full, then you feel full and satisfied, and you love what you're eating, and you're feeling great throughout the day. You have high energy, and it's this is what makes it,
you're not deprived. Restricted.
No, exactly. So like if I made the poke bowl I mentioned last night for dinner, I used some cabbage as the base. If I just used cabbage and I thought, oh, I can't eat rice, I would not have been satisfied. And so I make the rice, I enjoy the rice, and everything's great.
Love
like
that.
I just eat the rice. So I think people have been trained, especially by this keto community, of like, you can't eat carbs, carbs make you fat, don't eat them. And they're white knuckling it. And they're probably feeling very full because they're eating a lot of protein and a lot of fat.
Yeah.
But they're missing the satisfaction, as I know I was when I was keto.
Yeah.
I lived in New York City and I wasn't eating pizza. So like, of course I wasn't satisfied. I know. But I think that's another mistake is, not prioritizing your satisfaction, because that's a very important piece of the equation.
Agree. I know I've actually done a couple episodes just on that, on satisfaction, because I'm like, I feel so strongly about that piece. So I love how you're breaking this down of like the difference between fullness and satisfaction, because there is a difference, and you want both. And I was thinking too, when you were mentioning carbs, because I always love to get a little bit into the science or what the biochemistry behind it. And, I'm sure you know this, but just with the listeners, understanding that carbohydrates, they're like precursors to GABA and serotonin. And so, when I'm working with people who are dieting and or trying to lose weight and they're not sleeping well, I will often find it's because they've restricted carbs. And so if I can get them eating some carbs at dinner time, their sleep will improve. And that is because carbohydrates really affect our GABA production and our serotonin production, which make us feel relaxed and calm. And I do find it more often with women who, if I can get them, if they've been restricting carbs, if I can get them eating more carbs, there's lots of positives that'll come from that. But also, to your point, that sense, I think that's why we get the sense of satisfaction often from, it's not all people all the time, but why we can get that sense of satisfaction from carbohydrates. So I just think it's important to understand there's so many things that are nuanced, and cutting out a specific food group is just, I don't think, a good idea, because there's all these different reasons and all these different ways these different macronutrients affect us. And that's one example of how carbs do. So, yeah.
Yeah. And they're
they're
delicious.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say they're delicious.
They're delicious. That's right, Brooke. They are. Exactly. So what about, okay, we've kind of talked about the calorie counting. Just real quick, and I'm not going to go over on time with you, but just with macro counting, the 80-20 rule, like 80-20 balance, like thoughts on those couple of things. Those are kind of mainstream things out there.
So for macros, I was talking about this yesterday, actually, in the calorie training. There's a lot of misconceptions out there. There's people who are, I think there's even the hashtag, or it's like IIFYM, which is if it fits your macros.
Fits your macros, yeah. Right.
And there's people saying you have to find the right macro balance. You have to, be this scientist, and it's at every meal making it super complicated. There are people who are entering bodybuilding competitions, and that is their goal, and they are on their own path. The majority, I've never worked with one client who wants to be a bodybuilder. And for the majority of us, we do not need to do this perfect macro split for muscle gain. And it's gotten very convoluted of there's this small subset of a community who's doing that. And then it's like, oh, everybody should be doing this. No. So the really cool thing, if you look into the research, is research suggests you can lose weight beautifully if you are in a calorie deficit. So you're controlling for calories, which again, doesn't mean you have to track calories. You just are working on portions. And if you're prioritizing protein. So when protein and calories are controlled, you can see significant, beautiful weight loss. I would also add in there fiber. As I've mentioned, fiber is really important as well. When it comes to carbs and fat, if you are tracking, when you're tracking calories, that essentially means you're tracking the calories you're eating from protein, carbs, and fat. So you're already tracking macros. The macros are protein, carbs, and fat. So you're already tracking those if you're tracking calories. And so if you're staying within your calorie range, you're not going overboard on any of those three. So there's no need to worry about the grams or percentage you're getting of carbs and fat. You focus on the calories and protein. At some point, you're more conscious of fiber, and just let carbs and fat fall where they will. So some people eat more fat, fewer carbs. Some people are the opposite. That's totally fine. On a day-to-day basis, it's going to be different. But I've had clients come to me who have had these coaches in the past, these macro coaches who have said every single meal has to be a perfect
a certain ratio.
Of percentage of protein, carbs, and fat. And I'm like, I don't even know how to do that. Like, I would not even
can you imagine
know how to coach you. So I've turned people away who want to do that because I say, I actually don't know.
I don't want to do the math.
I'm not a math person. So I can't do that for you.
Thank you.
If you want to work with me, we're going to track calories if you want or not. We're going to talk a lot about protein, and we're going to leave it there. I'm not going to get into the details of that. So that's kind of my macro spiel. And then the 80-20, I think, just goes back to mindset. I talk a lot about aligning your reality with your expectations. So I think this is very important to do. People who get extremely frustrated on their weight loss journey, oftentimes it's because in reality, you're being 60 to 70% consistent, but you feel like you're doing all the things. So you are tracking, you are getting your steps, you are eating protein and fiber, you're working on your sleep, but you're doing this all with about 60% consistency. But then you're expecting the results that somebody would get from 80, 85% consistency. And you're not seeing those results. So then you think, oh, I'm doing everything and I'm not getting results.
Frustration.
And you're very frustrated. And you think, my body's broken, my metabolism's broken, this is never going to work for me. You have to align your reality, your consistency with your expectations. And it's totally okay to have a 60, 70% week. We all have them. We have these, I call them bare minimum weeks, where you're doing the bare minimum. You never get to zero, but you're just like, I can't do it all this week. I'm going to just focus on a high protein breakfast, and I'm going to go for a 10-minute walk after work. Done. Like, that's all I can wrap my mind around. But then if you have a week where things seem pretty good, work's not crazy, kids are in school,
your energy's good.
Your energy's good. Everything's kind of smooth sailing. That's a week that you can give more focus and probably see more results. And so it is very important when you're on a weight loss journey, going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, where it doesn't have to be super hard. It shouldn't feel super hard. But at the same time, consistency is everything. And it does require, to see results, it requires consistency. Period.
Absolutely.
I mean, I wish I always say, I wish I could make it so that it weren't so. I wish I could change it.
Is.
I would be a multi-billionaire if you could be 50% consistent and
still make it happen.
results. Yeah, I could. I would be the richest person in the world.
But yes, you would.
You it's just, the math isn't mathing, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't add
Yeah.
up. So
Reality. Right.
when I say 80-20, yes, nobody's perfect. Nobody's aiming for 100%. But if you want great results, really focusing on, and for people who aren't tracking calories, I think it can be really helpful to track habits concretely. So there are habit tracker apps.
Yep.
I provide a paper for clients where you bubble in the days you did something.
Yep.
And so you say, okay, my intentions for the week are I'm going to eat at least 30 grams of protein at breakfast. I'm going to walk at least 30 minutes throughout my day. Whether I split that up or I do it all at once is up to me. And I'm going to be in bed by 10 p.m. because we know, we haven't talked about it, but sleep, really important as well for your weight loss. So you write those 3 habits either on a paper or in your habit tracking app. And then the days you do those things, you bubble in or you check off in the app. And then you're able to reflect back on your week and you're able to ask, how consistent was I? Did I do the protein at breakfast 2 days or did I do it 6 days? Did I walk 4 days or did I walk 7 days? It's more helpful then if you're not getting the results you want to think, oh, okay, this makes sense. Going back to curiosity.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is why.
Yeah, this
and
is
as long
why.
as we
Now
have a
I
reason,
understand.
It's just the worst is when you feel like you're doing all the things and then feel like you're being consistent and you're not getting the results. And so if you can connect the dots backwards and you're like, oh, makes sense. I was about 50% consistent this week, not seeing the results that I got last week when I was 80% consistent. Totally makes sense. Then you just move on. And then you learn from it and you ask, what could I do next week to be more consistent?
You can get solution focused then. You can actually problem solve and find solutions and move along at an even quicker pace, even though, it's slow and steady wins the race on this one. But you know what I mean? It's quicker when we learn and can find those solutions. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And so a solution I'm thinking for the walks that has worked for me is I literally schedule them into my calendar.
Yeah.
I see every day, like when I'm going on my
where
walk,
you're going to do it.
I have to do that. Otherwise, I think about the walk. I have the best intentions of going for a walk. I think, I'm going to finish this one task and then I'm going to go on the walk. The walks don't happen consistently unless they're in my calendar, like a meeting with myself. And so things like that, you can become solution orientated and you can say, okay, I wasn't consistent. What could I do next week? What systems could I put in place so that I can stay more consistent next week?
I love that. It's a great way to do it. Okay, well, I will wrap it up here, but I did want to ask, is there anything else we didn't talk about that you want to put out there or want to say anything about? Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts? I think we covered a lot. I would just say
we did.
Going back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, I think the most important thing you can do is, if you're listening to this, you're probably wanting to lose weight. There's messages coming at you from all over the place, from friends, family, social media. Before you do the next thing, I would just really go in with that lens of, are these things I'm going to do to lose weight going to be things that I'm going to want to do or be able to do long term to keep the weight off? And this is going to save you so much time, money, and energy in the long run.
So true.
I also, on that point, would say, just be cautious of who you're following on social media and realize that you can do a cleanup anytime. So you can hold your finger over a video and say, show less like this, or hide. You can unfollow people. And that works really well for a lot of people. If you clean up your feed and you're not following the people who are pushing these extremes that you don't want to do, if you keep seeing those and they're kind of like seeping into your subconscious all day long, it's a lot harder. Versus my feed now, I'm not seeing any of that stuff. I'm just seeing people like you, people who are just very on board with the evidence and what actually works. And so I'm surrounded by this online community that's doing what I'm doing, and we're all feeling great.
Wonderful.
And it's not the people with their shirts off in the supermarket aisle who are like, don't eat any of this stuff. And you know what I'm talking about. It's like,
oh yeah,
these men in the supermarket with their shirts off. It's so weird, but they're demonizing
like,
literally everything.
Yeah.
You can't eat
anything.
Yeah.
No, I've seen it. Yeah. And it's sad. It's super sad. That is some, I didn't know that's where you were going with that. That's some awesome advice. It really, really is, because that what we allow, and it is what we allow ourselves to be inundated with, really does make a difference in how we think. The thought, because to your point, it does go into our subconscious, and that we populate thoughts from that. So then we're getting thoughts from that, we're getting feelings from those thoughts, and those are our behaviors. And so when we clean up our feed and make sure we are getting inundated with the messages that are helpful and not harmful for us, that can make a huge difference in our willingness and energy to engage in the behaviors we really want to engage in to get the results we want to get. So that's great advice. Love it. Love it. So thank you so much for your time and your insight. I love talking to you because I agree with everything you say. So it's always fun to talk. It's like when you agree, it's really easy, I guess, but I love it. It's just, you're very insightful. You're very just practical, and the wonderful practical strategies that you give. I think it's so great. And so I really appreciate your time and talking. Your podcast is called The Health Investment, which is a great podcast. Highly recommend all you listeners subscribe and listen to our show. Tell us where else they can find you and follow you, and anything else you want to put out there.
Awesome. Yeah. The Health Investment is basically where I am everywhere. So thehealthinvestment.com. I'm The Health Investment on Instagram, The Health Investment on TikTok. That's where I mostly hang out on social media. And then the Health Investment Podcast, like you said. So pretty streamlined.
But yeah. Okay. Well, Brooke, thank you so much. Hopefully we can do this again soon.
I know. It was such a pleasure, honestly. And I agree. It's
same.
I had the best time talking to you on my podcast. You should definitely link that episode in your show notes, and then people can hear even more from you. But perfect. Yeah, it's a pleasure connecting, and I would love to chat with you anytime.
Okay. Sounds good. We'll talk soon. See you, Brooke.
Bye.
Hi, everyone. Guess what? I have a lovely discount code just for you, my listeners. The code is 10 off. That's 10OFF. And it will get you 10% off any one of my online courses, which now include Mastering Mindful Eating, Overcome Binge Eating, Overeating, and Emotional Eating for Good. And I also have a course on When You Want to Stop the Weight Loss Medication, a comprehensive guide to weight maintenance and mastery. So if you've maybe lost some weight using a medication and you're now wanting to go off the medication but keep the weight off, this is the course for you. And any course you buy, you keep the course for a minimum of 3 years, maybe longer. It just depends on how many are purchased. All courses are self-paced, and I promise you they are practical, meaning they don't just tell you what you need to do. You actually engage in the skills and strategies needed to make actual lasting behavior change. You learn how to do the what. Okay, all courses have multiple modules with multiple lessons. All include lots of examples, tips, and tricks to make things simple and clear. And you also get lots of downloadable resources, including the daily planning template that I use with my own clients, the exact protocol to use after a binge or an overeat has occurred to minimize its damage on your body and your mind. There are protein cheat sheets, research-based journaling prompts, and the literal how-to checklists on the skill you are learning about. And with the weight maintenance course, you also have a movement module that will help you figure out how to make a movement plan that fits your particular lifestyle and level of fitness. And you also have a natural appetite regulation module. So whether if you have never tried an online course to change behavior, or if you have, I just highly would recommend that you try one of these. I've put my heart and soul into both of them. They are all research-based, and now you can get 10% off. So again, that code is 10OFF. If you're ready to make changes that last, you can go to my website, heatherheynen.com. Heynen is spelled Heynen. And from the main menu, click courses, and it will get you to where you want to go. Or you can click on the links in the episode description below the show. And again, as soon as you're there, when you're ready for checkout, just enter the code 10OFF, 10 off. And just a reminder, I also have an ebook cookbook that is now available. It's called Protein Forward Easy Recipes. It includes all high protein recipes, including breakfast and sweet treats full of protein and lunches and dinner. Okay, so again, head to my website. It's probably the easiest thing to do. HeatherHeynen.com. Heynen is spelled Heynen. And from there, go to courses or the cookbook. And again, use code 10 off at checkout. Did you know you can find a lot more help from me on my website? Go to HeatherHeynen.com. Heynen is spelled Heynen. And there you will find links to my online courses, how I work with clients one-on-one, as well as online with my coaching and counseling services that I offer. Did you know you can find a lot more help from me on my website? Go to HeatherHeynen.com. Heynen is spelled Heynen. And there you will find links to my online courses, how I work with clients one-on-one, as well as online with my coaching and counseling services that I offer.